Turkic people's genesis takes place in the steppes of southern Siberia at some point during the European Bronze Age. It is very difficult to classify the place Turkic languages occupy within the wider Altaic language group, but linguists unanimously agree that Turkic languages are closely related to Mongolic and Tungusic ones. Altaic language group actually includes Japanese and Korean. Just imagine that there is actually commonality between the language of Anatolian Turks and Japanese people. In this video we will be examining the DNA results of 3 early Turkic individuals. 2 of them are female and are from Chandman, Mongolia, inhabiting it during the European Late Iron Age, and then the 3rd individual is a male and is from Sagli, Mongolia, living around the same time as well. Of the 2 girls, the Ayla, which I'm gonna assign certain names to these girls just so it's easier for me to refer to them, Ayla carries mitochondrial lineage F1, whereas Seren carries mitochondrial lineage T2. The boy, let's call him Aydin, because it's a common Turkish name, carries mitochondrial lineage A and patrilineal lineage Q1b. Let's begin with the video.
So right now we are going to start with the DNA results of Aydin. So first let's look at his ethnic calculator results, and I will display his ethnicity calculator results with Eurogenes K13. So as you can see here, he is closest to Sarazm in Neolithic individuals from Tajikistan, followed by Burtas individuals from Volga, followed by Levan-Lukhta Iron Age individuals from Finland, followed by Batai hunter-gatherer from Kazakhstan, followed by Большой Оленей Ostrov once again from Finland, followed by Bactrians, medieval Afghans, and then Cimmerians, Sarmatians from the Urals, and Kafkas individuals from Anapa. So he seems to be quite Central Asian in his result. The closest two-way mixture for him is a mixture of Levan-Lukhta plus Sarazm Neolithic from Tajikistan. Levan-Lukhta, I will say again, is kind of like a very Eastern Sami-like people in Finland. It is the ancestral group to Samis. The second closest mixture is Batai hunter-gatherer from Kazakhstan plus Sarazm in Neolithic Tajikistan. So once again, relative to the Sarazm in Neolithic inhabitants of Tajikistan, this individual has a shift towards the ancient North Eurasian, you could say, or Eastern Eurasian kind of ancestry. With Eurogenes K13, the result will be on the bottom right of the screen. Now let's go ahead and look at what he scores for the Nashakot calculator. Let's see what phenotype he has, what he looks like. So it looks like he's got darkest brown eyes, definitely very dark eye color. 64% likelihood of that, 34% likelihood of regular brown eyes. It looks like he's got black hair. It looks like he's got olive or Mediterranean skin. And it looks like he's got straight hair. He does not have BH3 or BH2, but he does have BH1. And he does not have any light color variants in MC1R, so he's not predisposed to being ginger at all. Let's go ahead and see what he scores for the phenotype oracle. This might be interesting to see. So he is scoring actually various East Asian phenotypes for the closest phenotype. But for the two-way mixture, you can see that he's not entirely East Asian in his appearance. The closest mixture for him is actually 50% this phenotype plus 50% this phenotype. So the closest mixtures for him involve a West Eurasian kind of a look. So that's definitely very interesting. All right, let's see what he scores for the biomarkers. And for the biomarkers, it looks like he's scoring above average levels for vitamin D. It looks like he's scoring above average levels for LDL cholesterol, which is not so good. He's scoring slightly below average levels for HDL cholesterol, which is also not so good. He's scoring slightly above average levels for glucose, which is once again not really all that good. Yeah, okay, so there's a lot of unfortunate kind of genotypes here. He's got a phenotypes, I say, instead of genotypes. It looks like he's got a slightly above average level of hemoglobin, a slightly above average blood pressure. So it looks like his blood pressure falls into the elevated column, into the elevated category. It looks like he's got slightly below average level of iron in the blood and slightly below average level of SHBG, slightly below average level of red blood cell count in the blood. All right. Let's see what he scores for the polygenic risk scores. For the polygenic risk scores, it looks like he's got a slightly below average odds for leukemia, slightly below average odds for vitiligo, slightly above average odds for myopia, slightly above average odds for primary biliary cirrhosis. Looks like he's got a below average odds for stroke, below average odds for male pattern hair loss. Very cool. Europeans tend to have higher odds for male pattern hair loss, but in his case, it looks like he's got a little bit of protection from that. It looks like he's got a slightly above average odds for atrial fibrillation. Looks like he's got below average odds for deep vein thrombosis, so he does not have deep vein thrombosis. Once again, really good to see. He's got slightly above average odds for bipolar type 1, slightly above average odds for schizophrenia as well. It looks like he's got slightly above average odds for type 2 diabetes and slightly above average odds for Alzheimer's. But the one thing here that is a little bit concerning is the 3.13 times the average odds for multiple sclerosis. That's really high. So he actually has a pretty high score for multiple sclerosis. For the cancer section, looks like he's got 0 risk variance for breast cancer out of 10, definitely really good. 6 risk variance for testicular cancer out of 16, kind of good as well. 1 variant for celiac disease out of 8, which is kind of good as well. None for GSS syndrome, really good to see. 4 risk variance for Crohn's out of 22, once again, pretty good to see. Riefenstein's, nothing relevant was found, and for Parkinson's, he's got 3 risk variance out of 18. Once again, kind of really good to see. So the only thing that's kind of concerning is the genotype for multiple sclerosis, the result for multiple sclerosis. Let's go through the monogenic traits and see what kind of what kind of things we see here. So first of all, we see that he's got less dopamine D2 receptors than typical. Most likely, he's got less or intermediate number of dopamine D2 receptors. That's because of this genotype in TOC1. He's got AA genotype in TOC1. So this comes together with like a 40% reduction in dopamine D2 receptor sites. So definitely very interesting genotype. This does play a role in the calculation for risk score for schizophrenia and Parkinson's even. You know, this TOC1 variation is a part of the risk variance for Parkinson's. So some of the risk variants for Parkinson's that he has, 2 of them are this right here in TOC1. It looks like he does not have long form 5 HTTLPR, right? So he's got short form 5 HTTLPR, slight increase in the risk of depression. It looks like he does not carry the European lactose persistence mutation. When it comes to empathy, it looks like he's got slight predisposition towards lower empathy. Lower or average empathy are the 2 categories he scores most, although there's 4 variations here, and some of them he actually has empathetic genotypes in, like for example this one. Or this one, but overall the trend is that he has slightly lower empathy than average. We're gonna skip all that. I don't really care about this too much. Actually, what's interesting is that for EDAR, his genotype is heterozygous, so he's got 1 East Asian and 1, I guess you could say, not East Asian allele in EDAR. So heterozygous genotype in EDAR, this is definitely very interesting. He also carries the micropenis mutation in this variation, but I should say that it's pretty common among the samples I'm analyzing. This particular mutation right here, the micropenis variant here, is pretty common among the samples I'm analyzing, but it is not at all common among the general population. So I'm attributing this to a specific quirk in the way that these genomes were sequenced. So once again, I don't really think he actually carries the micropenis mutation. I think it's just a quirk of the way that these people were genotyped. In EDAR, it looks like in this variation of EDAR, he's got a heterozygous genotype, but in this variation of EDAR, he's got completely East Asian genotype. So 2 East Asian alleles in this variation of EDAR, and only 1 in this variation of EDAR. So here he's actually homozygous for the East Asian variants. Okay. I wanted to see multiple sclerosis, right? So let's hold on. Where's multiple sclerosis? Yeah, here's multiple sclerosis. So it looks like he's got risk variance for multiple sclerosis in the HLA gene, which is by far the most important gene when it comes to multiple sclerosis risk. So that's definitely very interesting. He's got risk variance for that. He's got, I think, heterozygous genotype in all of the HLA variations for multiple sclerosis. And what's interesting is he actually carries risk variants from vitiligo in the HLA gene as well. HLA gene is implicated in a lot of different autoimmune disorders, so it shows up quite frequently here on my in my trait predictor results. Let's see what else. Is there anything else interesting? Let's see the blood type. Right, and he says blood type is actually type A. Definitely very cool. So he's got type A blood type. Kind of uncommon. Most common blood type, in my opinion, is type O. But he's got blood type A. Moving on to our second individual, let's see Ayla. Ayla is a girl. Let's go ahead and look at what she scores for the ethnic calculator results. And I'm also going to show you her results with Eurogenes K13 once again on the bottom right of the screen. So with my ethnic calculator, she's closest to Livanluhta Iron Age, once again, Proto-Sami people from Finland. Followed by that are Hispanic people, modern Hispanics. Followed by that is this Israelite individual, which is kind of like an outlier in this result. Followed by that is Большой Оленей Остров, once again from Finland. Followed by that are Sarmatians from the Urals, Yamna from Kalmykia, Sarazm in Neolithic individuals from Tajikistan, Punjabi Jats, Cimmerians from Ukraine, and Assyrians come at last place. So her closest two-way mixtures are actually a mixture of Toland's individual from Germany plus Mongol, so half Mongol, half Toland's warrior from Germany. And the second closest mixture is New Grange, Neolithic farmer from Britain, plus Chorny Klabuki Turkic from Volga. So it looks like the closest mixtures with my ethnic calculator for her are a mixture of European, Central or Southern European, plus East Asian or Mongol or Turkic, some kind of a result like that. So a mixture of Western and East Eurasian is what we see with my ethnic calculator. I wonder what I'm gonna see with Eurogenes K13. I haven't really looked at it beforehand, so I'm gonna just, I guess, look at it as I compile the video. Let's see what she scores for the Nashakot calculator results, what she looks like. So it looks like she actually has hazel eyes, which is definitely very interesting. Kind of a light color, definitely a very light eye color for somebody from this region, from this ethnicity. She doesn't have blue eyes. That's kind of really unfrequent and improbable for her. Darkest brown eyes is actually even less improbable, even more improbable than blue. So she's got slightly higher odds of blue eyes than darkest brown eyes, which is definitely very interesting. But most likely she's got hazel eyes. The second largest category she scores after that is brown, and the third largest category she scores is blue with amber center. So most likely her eye color is indeed hazel. For the hair color likelihood distribution, most likely she's got dark brown hair. Light brown hair is actually also quite possible, 34%, but like dark blonde or black or light blonde, definitely very improbable. And red hair, there's actually a 4% likelihood of red hair as well, which is definitely quite surprising. And for skin tone, it looks like she's got white skin, which is also very interesting. So she's white skinned, most likely dark brown haired, and most likely has hazel eyes. That's like a typical European coloring, to be honest. Typical like German or Swiss or Northern French coloring. For hair texture, it looks like she's got straight hair. Okay. And for coloring related variants found in the file, looks like she's got heterozygous genotype for BEH3, heterozygous for BEH2, but she does have BEH1. So she's got two light color variants in BEH1, but only one light color variant in all the BEH2 and BEH3 variations. Alright, and she does not have. Oh, she does have. She actually has two light color variants in this variation of MC1R. So this is a part of the reason why she scores so high for red hair. Let's scroll up a little bit. She's scoring 4% likelihood of red hair. Part of the reason she's scoring like this is because of this genotype right here in MC1R. So she's got a predisposition to being red haired because of this. And now let's go and see for the phenotype oracle, what does she score there? So the closest phenotypes to her with the phenotype oracle are this, which I made myself. I made this morph myself. A lot of these morphs I made myself actually, but this one looks really funny. People have pointed out to me that it looks kind of funny. The second closest phenotype to her is this, and the third closest phenotype to her is this, like kind of like a European-looking phenotype. Let's zoom out a little bit and see the two-way mixtures. So the closest two-way oracle for her is a mixture of 50% this plus 50% that. The second closest two-way oracle for her is a mixture of 50% this plus 50% that. And the third closest is a mixture of 50% this plus 50% that. Further, as you go further, the distances get bigger. Right. Now let's go ahead and see what she scores for the biomarkers panel. So it looks like she's got a above average level of vitamin D. Looks like she's got a slightly below average level of LDL cholesterol, which is definitely really good. Slightly below average level of HDL cholesterol, which is not so good, but she's still in a healthy range. A slightly above average level of glucose, which is once again not that good, but she's still in a healthy range. It looks like she's got a slightly above average hemoglobin, which is, I guess, kind of okay. For blood pressure, once again, slightly above average blood pressure. So she still falls into the elevated category, just like I did, just like our previous individual. For level of iron in the blood, looks like she's got a slightly below average level of iron in blood. For SHBG, she's got slightly below average level of SHBG, and for red blood cells, slightly above average level of red blood cell count in the blood. Let's go ahead and see her polygenic risk scores. Let's see what predispositions she has. So it looks like for predispositions, she's got a slightly below average score for leukemia, definitely really good. Slightly below average score for vitiligo. High risk score for myopia, so she's definitely got a predisposition to myopia. It looks like she's got a pretty much average score for primary biliary cirrhosis, a slightly slightly below average score for stroke. It looks like she's got a high score for male pattern hair loss. Definitely very interesting, but good for her. She's not a male, so she doesn't have to worry about male pattern hair loss. She's got a slightly below average score for atrial fibrillation. Nothing relevant was found for deep vein thrombosis. And she's got a below average score for bipolar type 1, and she's got a below average score for schizophrenia. And she's got a below average score for type 2 diabetes, and she's got a pretty much average score for Alzheimer's. Definitely pretty good. The only thing really stands out as being high is the score for myopia and male pattern hair loss, but that's not that big of a deal. It looks like she's got a below average risk score for multiple sclerosis, definitely very good. For breast cancer, 0 risk variance, good to see. For testicular cancer, 8 out of 12, which is kind of bad, but like 12 is not a lot of variance in total. You want to see over 20 if you have a high quality file. It looks like she's got 1 risk variance for celiac disease out of 8, which is kind of okay. Nothing was found for GSS, and for Crohn's, she's got 6 out of 18. Let's see later how many of these 6 risk variants are in the most important variations, because I feel like none of them are going to be in the most important ones, in the most important variations that I print on the screen. For Raffenstein's syndrome section, looks like she's got nothing genotyped, and for Parkinson's, 4 risk variants out of 16. All right, let's see the result. So first, for results for mental health section, she's got heterozygous genotype and Combs-Walmer variation, meaning intermediate speed of dopamine reuptake, intermediate dopamine levels. I didn't talk about this for Aydin, did I? Hold on, let's go back to Aydin. I didn't talk about this in Aydin's result. I should have. So for Aydin, he's actually got the same genotype here. He's also heterozygous for Combs-Walmer variation, and Ayla is also heterozygous. So she's between the warrior and the warrior phenotype, intermediate speed of dopamine reuptake, intermediate dopamine levels. But she does have the warrior genotype in MAOA. So here, she's got less of the MAOA enzyme, therefore maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit above average level of dopamine in the brain. For dopamine D2, it looks like she's got pretty much spot on average predisposition to higher number of dopamine D2 receptor sites. So she's got intermediate number of dopamine D2 receptor sites, most likely based on her genotypes. She does not have the A1 or A1 TOC1, but she has some other genotypes in the DRD2 region that predispose her to having less dopamine D2 receptors, like for example this genotype right here. There's a couple other ones. So actually, I wonder why she's scoring so like average. Maybe it's not exactly average. Maybe the green section here occupies a little bit larger portion than the red. To me, from what I look, it looks like the green is a little bit larger. So she has actually a slight predisposition to higher number of dopamine D2 receptor sites, because the green part I think is ever so slightly larger than the red part. She's got long form 5-HTTLPR. Look at that. That's very interesting. That's also very European. Long form 5-HTTLPR is a very European trait, so definitely decreased risk of depression. For lactose persistence, she does not carry the European lactose persistence mutations. For OXTR and empathy gene, she's got definitely predispositions to lower empathy, which is also very interesting. Well, she's not a carrier for the C282Y hemochromatosis mutation. Really good to see. For let's see for facial morphology. So she does not have East Asian EDAR. Her genotype in EDAR is European. She does not have East Asian genotype in EDAR. She's got this genotype in POX3, which correlates to more upturned nose. Definitely very interesting. This genotype which correlates to smaller nose size, and this genotype which correlates to slightly thinner eyebrows. So if we go back to the phenotype oracle, hold on, and we see her closest phenotype, that's pretty much exactly what it is. Yeah, pretty cool. All right. She's not a carrier of Aquitaine cell-based type 1b mutation. She's not albino. Really good to see. Leukemia, doesn't really have leukemia. She has two genotypes which decrease the risk of leukemia. That's really, really good. She has this rare, uncommon genotype which greatly increases the risk of rheumatoid arthritis. So that's quite interesting. And she actually has 2 risk variants for adrenoleukodystrophy out of 10 total. That's kind of surprising. I don't see that very often. So it's either due to errors in genotyping, or I don't even know how it would be possible because they're just so uncommon. But I don't see them very often. Like I've never seen risk variants for adrenoleukodystrophy before in any of the files I've analyzed. So it might be it might be real actually, because I don't see this. I have never seen this before. There is no pattern of people scoring risk variants for ADL. In case you don't know what that is, it's kind of like when you have very long chain fatty acids building up in your brain, and they start destroying the myelin sheath or whatever. Yeah, and it's a very nasty degenerative illness. Typically, it affects boys. It doesn't really affect girls. Girls can be carriers, but it typically affects only boys because it's on the X chromosome. And like usually the lifespan for people with this condition is not any more than 20. For color blindness, she does not have any risk variants for that. And let's see. Okay, I don't really want to talk about this, to be honest. For blood group panel, it looks like she's got type O blood type. All right, that's definitely very cool. Type O is the most common blood type for all people. So her having type O blood type is kind of expected. Is there anything else I want to talk about here? She's got 1 copy of the hunter-gatherer and 1 copy of the farmer variant and CLTCL1, which correlates to intermediate ability to process carbs and sugars. Yeah, I don't really want to talk about any of this here. So, yeah, that's pretty much all it is for this individual, for Ayla. Now let's move on to Tseren. Okay, let's see what Tseren scores for my ethnic calculator results. Let's see what she scores for that. So she's got the closest population to her is Volga-Aka Iron Age Merians from the Volga-Aka region, which kind of makes sense because they are quite similar to all of these Tatars. And like I was looking at the results for Eurogenes K13, and she's close to all these populations that also score close to Merians and the Volga-Aka Iron Age. So that's not surprising, but the fact that the second closest population is Belbeaker from Britain and Global Amphora and various Belbeakers, that's definitely surprising to me. Right, so the proximity to Turkic people, the example that she's quite far from is the Turkic Caspian steppe, DA 142. Although if you look at the distance, 0.005 is not that far behind 0.0039, for example. So it may look like she's very distant from it, but she's actually about as close to this as she is to Volga-Aka Iron Age from the Volga. So this is just one of those cases where it might look like she's distant from her actual result. It might look like she's distant from the population that's actually supposed to be similar to her, but she's actually not that distant from it. It's just a matter of how the gradient is portrayed here. With the two-way oracle, she's closest to a mixture of Yamnek from Kalmykia plus Funnelbeaker from Ansarve, but there's also some models that are very I think very realistic, such as Большой Оленей Остров plus Balilua Lithuania, for example. So a mixture of Большой Оленей Остров, which is kind of like Western Siberian, like, plus Bailulilai medieval individual from Lithuania. That seems very normal. That seems very like expected for a um, what a Turkic individual from Mongolia would score. I mean, I don't know. It just looks normal to me. But some of these don't look normal at all. Some of these, like for example, Yamna, Kalmykia plus Spanish, that does not look very realistic to me. There's also Botai Hunter Gatherer from Kazakhstan plus Bailulai from Lithuania. Once again, definitely very cool. Also looks kind of realistic. But this prediction is definitely, I would say, worse than the other two for the ethnic calculator results with my trade predictor. Let's go ahead and see what she scores for the Nashakot results, what she looks like. So it looks like she is very dark. She's got darkest brown eyes, 63% likelihood of that. The second biggest group she scores for eye color is brown eyes, but most likely she's got darkest brown eyes. For hair color likelihood, it looks like she's got black hair. Definitely quite dark in terms of hair color. For skin color likelihood, looks like she's got light brown skin. So she's actually darker than the other two individuals. She's even got light brown skin. She doesn't have olive skin like Aydin. She doesn't have white skin like Ayla. She's got light brown skin. So that's definitely very surprising. Um, I already looked at the phenotype oracle, but the phenotype oracle really makes sense when you look at her results with Nashakot. If you look at her being very dark, having darkest brown eyes, having black hair, having light brown skin, the phenotype oracle will make a lot of sense to you. And she even has curly hair, curly or wavy hair, which is kind of also very interesting. She doesn't have BH3 or BH2, not even BH1, but she does have heterozygous genotype in BH4 somehow. So obviously there is a dislinkage event that occurred sometime in her ancestry, and she does not have. Oh, she does have. She actually has one light color variant in MC1R, so she has some predisposition to being ginger. Definitely very cool to see. But what we see with the phenotype oracle here is something very interesting. So she's closest to actually a South Asian phenotype is the closest to her. Followed by that is this sort of like I guess European phenotype, and followed by that is this sort of I guess Central Asian phenotype. But the reason she's so close to South Asians is because of how dark she is. Like with this kind of pigmentation, she would not be scoring closest to Europeans, or like the previous individual, like Ayla, she would not be scoring closest to Uralit phenotype, being this dark. And in the model, you see because of her darkness, because of how dark she is colored, you can see mixtures like this, for example, 50% this plus 50% that, or 50% this plus 50% that. So she's, quite exotic looking. She's very dark in color. And it looks like she does not really have East Eurasian facial traits, right? So we don't see any East Eurasian phenotypes in the Oracle. So she has very West Eurasian facial traits, but she's dark in color, which is why you even see, like, for example, this showing up, like this Armenoid phenotype showing up. So she's very West Eurasian in her facial traits, but she does not have light pigmentation at all. Let's go ahead and see what she scores for the biomarkers panel. And it looks like for the biomarkers panel, she's got slightly below average level of vitamin D. Looks like she's got typical level for LDL cholesterol. She's got slightly below average level of HDL cholesterol. That's kind of okay. I mean, it's not that bad. It's kind of typical. It looks like she's got a slightly above average level of glucose levels. All right, that's pretty typical. Good to see. Looks like she's got typical hemoglobin, and typical blood pressure, and also typical level of iron in blood, and also slightly below average but pretty typical level of sex hormone binding globulin as well, and slightly above average level of red blood cell count in blood. I'm sorry, I have a hard time pronouncing some of this stuff. It's like a tongue twister. Let's see her polygenic risk scores, what predispositions she has. So it looks like she's got a predisposition to higher odds ratio for leukemia. Definitely very unfortunate. But leukemia is a very rare condition, so maybe in this case it's not that bad. She's got a average predisposition to vitiligo, average predisposition to myopia, definitely very high predisposition to primary biliary cirrhosis. If only I knew what that is. I forgot what it is. I did some research back when I was adding this to my trait predictor, but I forgot what it manifests itself as. It looks like she's got average predispositions to stroke, higher than average odds for male pattern hair loss. Once again, that's very European of her to score that. She's got average odds for atrial fibrillation, pretty much average odds for deep vein thrombosis, very high risk score for bipolar type 1, also very high score for schizophrenia, among the highest scores I've seen so far. So it looks like she's got a predisposition to bipolar type 1 and schizophrenia. She's got pretty high score for type 2 diabetes. Looks like she's got average score for Alzheimer's. Looks like she's got slightly above average score for multiple sclerosis. Um, 2 risk variants for breast cancer out of 8, which is pretty typical. 7 for testicular cancer out of 14, which is also pretty typical. 1 risk variant for celiac disease out of 6, which is pretty typical. Nothing was found for GSS. 4 out of 18 for Crohn's, kind of typical. Nothing was found for Riefenstein's. And 2 out of 6 for Parkinson's, which is kind of not so good, but I can't really confirm where these risk variants for Parkinson's are. Okay. Yeah, okay. Let's see what she scores for the monogenic traits. It looks like she's got GG in COMT variation, so she's actually a warrior in COMT, meaning she's got higher activity of the COMT enzyme and quicker breakdown of dopamine. So she's got less dopamine in the system, and individuals with this genotype have advantages in stress resilience, but disadvantages in memory and attention tasks. When it comes to DRD2, it looks like she's got a predisposition to higher number of dopamine D2 receptor sites. So if you look at this chart, for example, the green occupies a much larger portion than the red. So she's definitely got a predisposition to higher number of dopamine D2 receptor sites. Does she have five? Yes, she has short form 5-HTTLPR. Okay, so she does not have long form 5-HTTLPR. She's got short form 5-HTTLPR and higher risk of depression. Pretty typical. She does not have European lactose persistence mutation. And for OXTR and empathy gene, it looks like she's actually got a predisposition to higher levels of empathy, which is definitely very interesting. As you can see, the green here occupies a much larger portion than the red. So she's got a predisposition to higher levels of empathy. Also very cool. She's not a carrier for the C282I hemochromatosis mutation. There's 2 other mutations that define hemochromatosis, but it looks like she doesn't have any genotypes for either of them. Okay, hold on, let's see the facial morphology panel. So she also does not have East Asian EDAR. Her genotype in EDAR is quite European. She's got a genotype for smaller nose size, longer mid-face length, and intermediate odds of protruding nasal bridge in POX3. Alright, for vitiligo panel, she actually has 1 risk variant for vitiligo in the HLA gene, which is also very interesting. So there is a little bit of predisposition to vitiligo. What other HLA related variants is there? Yes, so she's also a HLA risk variant carrier for multiple sclerosis. So that's very cool. Yeah, she has some risk variants for multiple sclerosis in the HLA. I think she was scoring high for that as well. So that's why I kind of want to see what her genotypes for HLA are. No micropenis, really good to see. Mix of muscle types, likely more sprinter than an endurance athlete. She does not have photic sneeze reflex, and for EDAR, both of the EDAR genotypes are very European in her case. Okay. She's got this really uncommon genotype in MTHFR, which actually leads to a significant reduction in the efficiency of processing folic acid, and leads to higher odds for a variety of illnesses from autism to coronary heart disease. That's definitely very interesting for cancers panel. She's got genotypes that increase the odds of testicular cancer, so it looks like she actually does have a little bit of a predisposition to testicular cancer, but good for her. She's a female. She doesn't really have to worry about that too much. For leukemia, wow, okay, so she definitely has some genotypes that increase the odds of leukemia, and I remember she was scoring high for it as well. So there you go. She's got this genotype which leads to a 4.6 times increased risk of ankylosing spondylitis. I don't know how to pronounce that, to be honest. And okay, for androgen receptor gene panel, it looks like she's got GG in aspiration of AR, which leads to a higher odds of baldness. Very European genotype here as well. Europeans tend to have GG here. Actually, pretty much every European has GG here, without any exceptions. But outside of Europe, like in East Asia and in Africa, the A allele tends to be predominant, and the A allele sort of protects them from baldness. For muscular dystrophy myopathies, it looks like no risk variance for ADL or any of the other muscular dystrophy myopathies, no risk variance for color blindness. FTO gene panel looks like she's got some heterozygous gene type in FTO, so maybe a little bit of a predisposition to obesity. And 2 copies of the hunter-gatherer CLT TCL1 gene variant, so reduced ability to process carbs and sugars. Definitely very interesting. Very cool to see. And for blood group panel, it looks like her blood type is once again type A. So this is already the second type A individual we see in this video. I think the first type A individual was Aydin, wasn't he? Yes, it was Aydin. Aydin was type A. Then Ayla was type O. Then Seren is once again type A. So 2 of these individuals had type A blood type. 1 had type O. Definitely very cool to see. Well, thanks for watching my video until the very end. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Also, I want to remind you that you can download all 3 of these samples from links which is in the description of the video. Do consider buying my software, supporting me in my work here on YouTube. And of course, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.